portion of our business meeting into order. We've concluded executive session with no action to report. So the first thing that we will do is a Pledge of Allegiance. We'll all stand and I'll ask Mr. Trent to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, emergency evacuation, please make note of the exit signs, so in case of an emergency, you can leave directly through the exits, quickly and orderly. In addition, this is a smoke-free school district. Smoking is not permitted in the building or anywhere on school grounds. We're also a hate-free school district, and bullying and demonstrations of hate are not permitted anywhere on our school grounds. So now, on the board consent agenda, items C1 and C2. Is there a motion to approve those items?
I'll make a motion.
Let's see, and I saw Mr. Pacini made the motion, Ms. Ancona seconded it. Any questions or discussion? I just wanted to clarify that with regard to the virtual board officers academy, at a previous meeting, the board had authorized me and Cheryl Felice to attend the live board officers academy. And for various reasons, that's not being done. They're giving a refund.
Yes.
And so we'll get the refund from that registration. And this is authorizing registration for the virtual academy, which is actually less money than what the live version had been. And our clerk is saying that was a correct recitation of the history.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Why would a non-officer attend the Officers Academy?
it's open to anybody.
Okay.
And actually, I think, if anybody else wants to go, we just have to get approval because it's a payment of money.
Okay.
So I think it's a good thing for all board
I'm not
members
making
to
an
know
opinion,
what
I'm
the
just-
officers are supposed to be doing.
I'm not offering an opinion, but I'm just curious, thought it was a little odd, that's all.
So anyway, we've got the motion. It was
May I speak to
seconded.
that comment? May I speak to that comment?
Sure.
Thank you. I was an officer of this board for 2 years, and I'm always looking to improve. I enjoy the seat I sit in now, but also I think it's our board responsibility to help aid the officers of the board, and I wanted to attend this seminar so I could find out ways in which to do that, and that was the reason that I asked to attend.
So we have the motion now. All in favor of approving this? It's unanimous. Cheryl, you'll have to do something to indicate you can do it verbally. Oh, I see. Yes. It's unanimously approved. And next, Dr. Gianni, Superintendent's Report.
Yes, thank you. As of yesterday, as a report for COVID positive cases reported to us. As of today, we have 68 known positive COVID-19 cases that have been reported to the district. Of these 68 reports, 13 include faculty or staff members and 55 include students. I regret to report that these numbers are similar to those we were reporting mid-December of last school year. We're currently seeing a greater incidence of positive cases among our students, particularly at the secondary level. Next item, back in December of 2019, the New York State Department of Health met with faculty and staff at Frank P. Long Intermediate School to present their findings of an evaluation of cancer incidents among current and former faculty and staff members. In the December 2019 report or study, the Department of Health indicated the number and pattern of cancer diagnoses did not appear unusual. At that time, and at the request of an employee, the DOH agreed to further analyze the data of cancer occurrence among employees who had worked in the buildings during different time periods and report back their findings. Well, earlier this week, we received a copy of the DOH analysis, which in part states there was no evidence of elevated cancer incidence among employees who had worked at Frank P. Long School in any 10-year time period examined separately. Both reports can be found on our website for those who may wish to review them in their entirety. Weekly testing. As you know, the New York State Department of Health issued update school guidance that included a requirement for weekly COVID-19 testing for all school employees. Employees are able to opt out of the weekly testing if they provide proof of being fully vaccinated for COVID-19. Over the last couple of weeks, the district's been planning and preparing to implement this required weekly mandate, and we are set to begin on Monday, October 4th. Suffolk County DOH has launched 4 testing sites for school employees who need to be tested, and that information has been shared with our faculty and staff. Currently, our records indicate 67% of our employees are opting out of that weekly testing. At our last meeting, the Board of Education had a brief discussion regarding the condition of our artificial turf field at the high school. For the public's information, inspection of the field is done annually through a GMAX test by an outside vendor. This past June, the GMAX test indicated all test locations meet the plan requirement of 200 Gs or less. However, administration is aware that the rubber substance in and under the turf is deteriorating and in need of repair or replacement, and we are in the process of planning for these repairs, which we would present to the board in the near future. I'm happy to report, beginning this past Monday, the middle school began outdoor recess from the cafeteria. We had to start small, only permitting one of the 3 cafeterias out at a time on a rotational basis because we simply do not have enough faculty or staff to supervise these 3 locations yet. Moving forward, we will continue to recruit faculty and staff and are hopeful we'll be able to offer to all locations and eliminate the rotation. School administration will also seek student input on types of activities the students would like to do while outside for recess, and have already brainstormed some ideas to make it an interdisciplinary approach. And that is all the announcements I have for today.
May I just ask a question about that, about the recess? Because I noticed on the middle school weekly calendar, there was a reference to meetings with the students to see about the plans. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
I can't elaborate exactly what happened in those meetings. I do know administration does plan to meet with the kids through not only social studies classes who initially brought the proposal through the civic proposal last year, but they're also now going to talk with students to see what type of activities they might like to see during that time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Puccini?
Of the COVID positives that you reported, I think you said the number was 68. How many of those were on remote only?
1.
It's only 1?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because I thought I saw a couple of the emails come through and it seemed like they were a few more than just 1.
No,
Specifically the first week of school. Okay, so it's only 1. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what's the result? I didn't hear that.
The question was how many of the COVID positive reports were remote only, and the answer was 1.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I turn it back to you, President.
All right, so this is for trustee and advisory committee report, but before we go around the table, I just want to clarify, from our last meeting, Chris Puccini, you're going to be the voting delegate to our
For the NISBA.
New York State School Boards Association meeting, which is October 18th.
Correct.
Okay,
Tonight is the Nassau Suffolk meeting, which obviously I can't attend because I'm.
okay. So now we'll
Sorry, that's a
start.
misunderstanding. May I ask a question on that?
Sure.
I thought he was the voting delegate for the Nassau Suffolk, and then I was designated for the New York State School Board at the last meeting. In fact, if you look in the minutes that we just approved, which I'm pulling up now, that is what
Yeah.
we said.
I had similar confusion. I thought it was discussed at the October meeting.
Okay.
Was Nassau Suffolk, but I'm happy to do whatever or not do whatever. Doesn't matter to
So,
me.
because as I remember it, it was, one of you was going to be the voting delegate and the other was going to be available in case.
I thought Cheryl was appointed as the liaison to New York State School Board Association for the district.
Yeah.
I don't know that we discussed Ms. Felice or anyone else being the NISBA delegate. I think there was a little bit of confusion. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to step aside. It doesn't really matter to me.
So let's just clarify that. I think we have Ms. Felice as the liaison, you know, because, and then with regard to being a voting delegate on the business meeting, did you find it, Ms. Felice?
I'm sorry, I closed it because I thought you were going in another direction. Actually, the voting delegate, you're correct. I'm the liaison. I was approved as the liaison for New York State. The voting delegate is neither one of us. That has already been decided, and it's somebody from another district for this zone.
Okay, so the way I understood it is Mr. Pacini would be the voting delegate and you're the backup in case for some reason he couldn't do it.
He's the voting delegate for the New York, for the Nassau Suffolk. But the voting for NISBA has already been decided by NISBA.
I'm having trouble not
I have
following.
communication from the district clerk from NISBA that says we have a voting delegate for the NISBA resident. This virtual meeting, from my understanding, is in place of what would normally take place at the convention.
So let's just straighten
Did
this out.
we all get copies of that notification? I don't recall seeing it.
That came over on email this afternoon from our clerk.
Okay, I didn't open today's emails. Okay, that's why I'm confused.
So it's a virtual meeting. It's on Monday.
I don't know that this was sent to the entire board by email. I was given a hard copy of this from Christine when I walked in tonight. So the board does not have the this is basically instructions for how to vote and what to do to vote prior to the meeting.
Okay, I didn't see that.
Nobody saw. I think Christine just handed me, it looks like it came in this morning or late this morning, and a copy of it was given to me probably because I'm on the agenda to be that delegate, which is why I'm assuming Ms. Flynn gave it to me.
Let's just make this easy. We need a voting delegate to the New York State School Boards Association meeting on Monday, October 18 at 4 p.m. Which one of you wants to do that?
Where is that on the agenda, may I ask?
It's not.
Oh, it's not on the agenda, okay. Did you register me as the voting delegate, or did you just solicit the information?
I have not registered anyone. I was under the impression that last time, I thought Ms. Felice couldn't make that date, and that's why you had volunteered to do it. So
I can't remember the conversation, but I do remember there being confusion on my part between Nassau Suffolk and NISBA because of the date, because I knew that the Nassau Suffolk's was this week. So when you said October, I thought I got it wrong, so I was happy to do it. I'm happy to do this is fine. But anyway.
All right. Ms. Felice?
So you weren't made aware of any of this? That's
Only that there needed to be a voting representative for Monday, October 18 at 4 p.m. And my
which none of us
understanding.
were made aware of. Only one person was made aware
Now,
of
hold
that.
on,
No, that's
Cheryl,
not
hold
true.
on. It was my understanding that was what we had already decided at the last meeting. But Chris is now saying
You want me to say
There's
what
some
This is,
confusion.
my understanding of the last meeting was, there was a meeting for October 18th on a Monday, we needed a voting delegate. I agreed to do it. I think we all understood, or thought, at the last meeting when I agreed to do it on Monday, October 18th, that this was the Nassau-Suffolk voting meeting, which is not. It is the NISBA meeting, because the Nassau-Suffolk meeting is tonight. There's where the confusion is as to what it was, but we did discuss me being the voting delegate at a meeting on Monday, the 18th. The confusion is whether it was NISBA or whether it was Nassau-Suffolk.
And I thought it was the state one.
You did say that.
Right.
You did. I kind of, as I'm replaying it, and I was confused because I did not think it was the state one. I
So
thought it
if
was
we
Nassau-Suffolk.
if we already decided with regard to the state meeting, we did that at our last meeting. Correct?
I believe that to be the case, but I'm not finding it in the minutes right now. So it might have been the meeting, it might have been the meeting before.
I'm confident it was definitely the last meeting.
Okay. Well, if it's not in the minutes, we'll have to have the clerk go back and we may.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry, I did find it. It was item C3, New York State NISBA 2021. No, that was Officer Board Academy. Sorry, that's not it.
It's under your comments under.
What are the interest of time, since we have a meeting before, that we get this straight and
All
put it back on?
right, so if need be, we will either amend the minutes after listening to the tape of the last meeting, or to make it even easier, why don't we just have a motion now to appoint, and since I would,
Ms. Felice, if you want to go to the meeting, you're more than welcome. It's not really that important to me. So if that's the concern here and you want to do this meeting, by all means.
I will certainly do my part, because that's the way I understood it, that I was doing New York State and you were doing Nassau-Suffolk. But I was just more perplexed at not being aware of any of this being on the agenda, and it wasn't. So, anyway, and I do apologize to the board and the community for not being able to be there in person right now, which is adding to the confusion.
And I
okay,
think it's important to note that these are never virtual meetings. These are always, this is in place of them not having a in-person annual convention.
right, that's the first time they've done that.
Well, I think last year was the first time, but
Right. All right, so I think what that means is we have to appoint, just to clarify. Now, John, is this gonna be like some kind of motion to change what we did at the last meeting? Or can we
I'm
just-
not sure that there was a motion at the last meeting. It sounded like there was a discussion at the last meeting. It didn't sound like there was a motion.
I don't think there was a motion and a vote.
It was a discussion.
Okay.
So my recommendation
was who can go.
would be to have a motion and a vote now.
All right. Is there a motion to appoint Cheryl Felice as the voting delegate to the New York State School Boards Association meeting on Monday, October 18 at 4 p.m.? Ms. Ancona made the motion. Mr. Trent seconded it. Questions or discussion?
Yes, Madam President.
Okay,
And I do apologize. Last month's meeting, under item, we were having a discussion about open meeting law, then item number 2. Item number 3, New York State
Resolutions.
School Board resolutions. It was in there that Chris was appointed to Nassau-Suffolk. I was appointed as the advocacy. And in the last line, there is a comment, and I do apologize. There is a comment that says Trustee Pacini commented that he will attend the NISBA annual business meeting on October 18th. I did not recall that happening, but apparently it did. And it's in these minutes.
all right, so
And again,
now
Mrs. Felice, if you would prefer to attend, I'm more than happy to step aside. It's up to you.
So there's a motion and a second.
Sounds like
on the
those
table.
meetings are riveting. All right, let me just look at the camera.
Okay.
I am available. schedule if you want.
Okay, so,
I got it.
So
Okay, yeah, she's just checking her calendar.
she just said she was available, so I'm happy to step aside. I think we gotta.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to do something we never did, so we don't have to amend minutes, we don't have to do anything.
No, I think she just said by the minutes that we did appoint me for that meeting. Isn't that what you just
No.
said?
It says there's a comment, it wasn't a.
Oh, it wasn't a
Right.
resolution. Okay, just making sure.
It wasn't a motion.
So now we've just done the motion and it's seconded. Cheryl Felice to be our voting delegate at the October 18 New York State School Boards Association meeting, okay? All in favor of doing this? Let's see, I think it's unanimous. Yes. All right, good. Now we're gonna do trustee and advisory committee reports.
hold on, Mrs. Are we appointing Mr. Caccini for our liaison to,
That was done last.
That was last time.
by a formal vote? Or just-
Yeah, that was part of the minutes.
That was a vote, yeah. The liaison and,
And the,
right.
right,
Gotcha.
okay. I'll start with Brand Johnson.
As I said last meeting, we will be having homecoming again this year. Each grade level is working on making their float for homecoming, which will take place on October 16th. The student council is busy planning and making decorations for the dance. The dance will take place outside, and the student body is super excited to have homecoming back. There's been a lot of talk about it throughout the school day, every day. Due to transportation issues, Club Day, originally scheduled for the 23rd, had to be made virtual. Each club created a video saying what their club is about, and we combined these clips into one video, which will be posted to the class and student council Google Classrooms tomorrow. There will be a form attached for the students to fill out what clubs they're interested in signing up for. Habitat for Humanity is happening on October 9th. We are getting different groups of people from the high school to come help clean up. We will be collecting old electronics to be disposed of. We will plant flowers and clean up the area, and the volunteers will sign up with the QR code on the bottom of the poster that has gone out. I wanted to say thank you for allowing the teams to use the locker rooms. It's made a huge difference before games and practices and getting ready. Also, it's had a positive effect on the mental part of it. It's another return to normal that everybody needed.
Thank you. Mr. Pacini?
I have nothing tonight.
Mr. Trent?
No, I haven't looked at it.
Ms. Aruda?
I attended last night's meet the teacher at the high school. I want to thank all of the high school teachers that obviously I went to for doing a phenomenal job. I don't know if I got to mention at the middle school as well. There's something to be said about the virtual meetings. In person is nice, but it is definitely nice not trying to shuffle around a large building, trying to find places. And I think it gives the teachers a little bit extra time to be able to speak to their curriculum in their classrooms. So thank you to the teachers.
Thank you. And Ms. Ancona? Nothing. Thank you. Ms. Felice?
Yes, just briefly, the president spoke to the seminar we were going to attend last Friday. Because we didn't attend that seminar, I was available to attend as invited a Zoom webinar. It was the Long Island Families Together, and they are a nonprofit group that helps families with mental and behavioral issues and put them in contact with resources that may not be available through the schools. So they had a legislative breakfast on that Friday. I'm not recalling the date right now, but it was the last Friday. And it was very informative as someone who didn't her work career wasn't in the education system. It was helpful to me being on a board to understand what our district goes through with CSD diagnosis and families go through. And so their website is lift, LIFT, 4 kids.org. And then they are also affiliated with a Families Together in New York State, which is having another virtual symposium on October 12th, which I'll share the information with you. It's very inexpensive, but it's something that I think would help those who don't have those, don't necessarily have the knowledge about what we have to deal with. And since we spoke so much about social emotional well-being, it was a nice insight. And that they spoke about, child, avoidance of vaping and drugs and suicide and it was a very good use of time when we had hoped to be someplace else. So I'll get that information to the board to share with the board, and we can perhaps talk about maybe getting this group at our leadership group each month. I thought it was very beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no, I attended no meetings. They'll all be coming up, I think, starting next week, so there'll be more at the next meeting. We're next up to public commentary. Do we have any members of the public who were going to speak? No. And no email, nothing to read. Okay. And of course, we did get emails, during the last couple of weeks on a number of subjects like lockers and backpacks and quarantine requirements and so forth. And they've all been referred to the appropriate administrator for response. So next, items for discussion.
Okay, I think you're going to turn it over to me.
That's
And
right.
our first item for discussion is reopening plan. As promised, and at the request of the board, administration took a close look at a couple of items. One, temperature checks upon building entry, and two, use of all and sport lockers. After surveying all buildings, it was determined we have not refused any entry of a student, faculty, or staff member through our temperature check screenings. As the board knows, self-daily attestations are required, and they appear to be a sufficient practice at this point. So as a result, administration is going to recommend to the board this evening to amend our reopening plan and eliminate temperature checks upon building entry for students, faculty, and staff. We will continue to require the checks for essential visitors who come and visit our schools. However, with regard to the use of hall, physical education, sport lockers, we have revisited the use of these and are prepared to begin permitting use of sport lockers for athletic teams. On a staggered basis, depending on the size of the room, obviously, those issues will be dealt with at the building level. And the reason being is we still need to provide for social distancing. However, we're not prepared to assign physical educational wall lockers at this time. Contact tracing and social distancing guidings are at issue with that regard. If we were to assign the use of physical education lockers, we would need to increase and stagger dress times to allow for social distancing. The increased dress time would reduce, obviously, the class time significantly, and an additional time would also need to be added at both the start and the end of each instructional period. Supervision will also be problematic with 3 areas that need to be supervised: students waiting to be dressed, students dressing, and obviously students dressed and prepared for class. With regard to the hall lockers, the use presents challenges with both contact tracing, as I mentioned at our last meeting, and social distancing as well. Students tend to congregate around open lockers between periods, which would make contact tracing a challenge. And when lockers are open on both sides of the hall, it reduces the width of the hall and passing area from 3 to 4 feet, thereby decreasing the space for social distancing as students pass down the hall. I understand other districts are permitting the use of hall and even PE lockers. However, with the COVID-19 numbers rising, particularly at the secondary level here in the district, I'm simply not prepared to assign physical education hall lockers at this time. We will continue to look at it and brainstorm things that we can do. Those are also suggested by some of our community members with the principals, but at this time, I'm simply not prepared to authorize that. We did look into the need to carry textbooks from class to class and learned that secondary teachers do not require students to carry textbooks from class to class. They either have a classroom set and/or one's assigned at home, so there should be no need to carry heavy textbooks. Yes, there is a need to carry the Chromebook. There is a need to carry notebooks for writing utensils. Our faculty are working with students in terms of leaving some of these items at class, so they don't need to carry as much. And we'll look at some issues with regard to particularly 6th grade, where they're really assigned to 2 classes, so maybe it is possible to leave the Chromebook there. That's something I haven't explored, but recently heard to take a look at. So we will take a look at that as well. And that is the only items that I have reopening. I'll be happy to address any questions. I see Mr. Pacini has his hand up.
Yeah, so lockers are an issue for me. I've spoken to you about it before. I get it. I think one thing that I didn't understand, that I think some of the public might not understand, is that close contact of 15 minutes isn't in one duration. It's over the course of a day. So 3 minutes times 8 periods is more than 15 minutes. I understand that. However, I still have a concern, and I know what you're saying about textbooks, but these young kids, the backpacks are heavy. We're hearing it more, I'm hearing more about lockers right now than anything else. Listen, I said it last time, right? And I know some people might think it's silly, but my daughter has a shoulder issue right now, and it's true. I don't know what is being required, if she's carrying more than she's supposed to, but, you know, a 10, 11-year-old kid, you know, with a Chromebook, the backpack, a lunch, a couple of notebooks, you know, if there's an instrument they're carrying as well, extra water, I mean, it adds up, and it is creating, you know, an issue. And I just feel like, you know, sometimes the cure is worse than the disease right now, and I'm feeling that right now in a lot of different scenarios. I almost feel like it's a worse environment than it was last year for different reasons. So, again, if our neighbors can figure it out, so can we. So I'd like to know what and how other districts are able to accommodate this, and if they are accommodating this, do they have a higher rate of COVID and quarantines? And maybe, you know what, maybe the parent population is, you know, if it leads to more quarantines, you know, that's a decision that's gonna have to be discussed and made. Maybe the parent community doesn't really understand that because of the duration, because I certainly didn't. But I still think that this is a problem. So, I mean, I certainly am going to be going through my kids' backpacks tonight and tomorrow and understanding what they're being required to carry with them and what they're carrying on their own, and I would hope that all the parents are doing that. Transitioning over to sport lockers, I don't see how on earth we're going to accommodate the sports teams all in the same locker room, and I understand we're gonna shuffle them in different cohorts, but you're now going to take practice time away from these teams. And the fall, it's a bigger issue because the football team has 50 kids on it, and then you throw in 2 soccer teams and a cross-country team. I'm more concerned with the loss of practice time in a sport that is dangerous, such as football. Right? I think there's an issue there, and you know, maybe, and it may be unfair to the other sports, maybe now's not the time, since there's only 3 weeks left in the fall season at the middle school. Maybe it's the winter sports, we start it there, because we just don't have the locker room space. And I don't want to make a decision for the cross-country and the soccer families, but are they, and it's a question, I don't know the answer, is there really an issue with the equipment they have? But then again, it contradicts what I just said about putting it in their backpacks as well. So it's kind of a catch-22. There's really not a great solution, but there is a great level of frustration. I know we want to do it, but now we're going to take away from a kid's experience in sports to accommodate this one situation when we really don't have the space. So I understand there was a reaction based on, I know I made comments at the last meeting, I know parents are upset, but it really seems like a one-size-fits-all solution doesn't really make sense here because of the limitation and the size of that locker room. Maybe, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, maybe, you know, again, if I'm not gonna get my way here in hallway lockers, it sounds like I'm not, maybe those kids that have an instrument and/or, play soccer or cross-country can use their hallway lockers. That wouldn't be a huge population of students, it wouldn't be the whole population, and they would only be going there before and after school to retrieve their items, and they could change wherever they're changing. Now, I don't know if that's, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but it's really kind of hard for us, constantly, it seems like our solutions really don't solve much. So I'm a little frustrated with that. So I would ask us to maybe go back to the drawing board and reconsider what's happening at the middle school. Because, like I said, if we're gonna accommodate lockers and it's gonna result in 30 to 40 minutes of lost, and I don't know what the timing is, but if you're the last team to get dressed in that locker room, and I don't know who goes first, but if football is their day to go first, 50 kids getting dressed on equipment, that's a long time. And then you get soccer, and then cross-country maybe out of luck, and vice versa the next time. It just doesn't, that's lost time. And again, I want us to be mindful of what the impact is on the student's psyche, that's all, and experiences.
Okay, so I'm not aware of any lost time for practicing down at the middle school as a result of it. I didn't certainly micromanage it. I asked them to figure it out. I'll look into that to see what is happening.
But we didn't start yet, I don't mean to cut you off, we didn't start yet, did we, with the lockers?
I believe they're planning to begin this week. I know high school's already.
No, high school is, but high school has more room, they have separate rooms for teams. Football team has its own room, right? So, but I'm saying at the middle school, we haven't started yet.
The physical education locker.
Yeah, but I'm saying the middle school teams have not started using lockers yet, other than football.
No, football has been.
Has been, other than football,
But
yeah.
I asked the middle school to look into having a rotational basis so all the kids could use the locker room.
Yeah.
I did ask that because we had girls dressing in hallway bathrooms. which
Yeah, listen, it's
is
not, I get
acceptable.
it, it's not, I understand, if everybody's listening, I understand, this isn't an easy solution, I just feel like we may have, and I don't know, I would hope that the middle school administration solicited input from coaches and maybe even some students, I don't know that they did or didn't, but I would hope that, we didn't make a knee-jerk reaction because some things were said at this table, and we created a bigger problem than the one we had before, and that's really what I'm inquiring about. So I do think that somebody needs to really look at that whole situation, because in my calculation, you're talking about 100-plus kids are gonna move through these locker rooms in a certain amount of time to get out onto the field. It has to, I mean, I would think that it would have to result, right? If there's 50 kids on a football team, 2 soccer teams we have, I gotta think that's another 40 kids, 50 kids, right? And we're over 100 kids. Seems like it's gonna be tough to do.
Mr. Pacini, let's roll it back a little bit, because the board oversees and doesn't do, the day-to-day administration. And if you think back to when we had our special meeting back in the summer, and we told the superintendent that what we wanted was the least restrictive alternative within the mandates and the guidances. So this is an area where, through the superintendent and his administrators, they're gonna have to figure it out. I think that what you're saying is loud and clear, and I don't think there's anybody at this table who disagrees that if there's a way to make things easier, we'd all like to see it happen. But they're weighing the issue with regard to the guidances, the social distancing, this continued requirement for contact tracing, which becomes very difficult when you're in the group environment. So I think that's something that we could have the superintendent look into and report back to us at our next meeting.
Which is why I'm bringing it up,
Yeah,
right?
and we surely will. I I know also at the middle school, I believe we opened up a room to allow athletes to store equipment so they didn't have to carry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just, it doesn't, it hadn't felt like, it feels like, and again, I'm in a 30,000-foot view, which is why I bring it up. It feels like there's a knee-jerk reaction on certain things to appease, comments, whether it's a board member, whether it's parent populace, whatever else it is. I just want to make sure that we're vetting through all the action and reactions or cause and effects of everything we do here. That's all.
I'll look at it, I don't believe there's a knee-jerk reaction.
Okay.
Additional comment?
Yep.
Melissa, did you have your hand up? Did you want to go?
It was just kind of brief. It kind of piggybacked off of our conversation last week was, I know when we spoke in reference to the lockers, one of the topics we brought up was lockers for those that may need them as opposed to, because I think we're getting a little bit of a mixture, at least I'm hearing a little bit of a mixture where there are certain families that are saying, or certain students that are saying that there is a need for a locker, and others that say, I never use my locker pre-COVID, post-COVID, during COVID, I never have. So I just didn't know if administration had looked into possibly that avenue for putting it out for an optional locker. Because we may have a lot that don't want them.
Listen, we thought about that, but as much as you say, some people don't want them, everyone needs to get them. And they will be open. If we're going to look at things, we have to look at other avenues to be able to allow student use of it. And unfortunately, at this point, between periods is not an option that I think is something we should go down yet.
I understand. I just wanted to, find out where we were with the topic that we left off on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to add to the comments that I think we have to look closer because the public and the families are expressing the need to have lockers restored. So I support us moving in that direction and moving and finding a way to make it work.
Mr. Trent?
So, yeah, I just want to, better understand, Dr. Journey, at what point would you consider bringing back the lockers?
I think when the numbers get down, but with what we're seeing now and over the last couple of weeks, secondary numbers are rising, okay? I can't tell you why that's happening, but I do believe reducing social distancing and allowing kids to congregate is only going to increase that. So I can't speak to other districts. I can speak to what I saw in Newsday, everybody else saw. In Newsday, while those numbers are underreported for us, I believe they're underreported by everyone. But if you take a look at it, we're well below our neighbors. So what are we doing differently? Well, I can tell you, we're not using lockers. So while I can't point to it, I'm not prepared to just open the lockers. The hall lockers, I think, is something we can look at down the road. Phys ed, I don't see it happening because we'll reduce the class time to maybe 10 or 15 minutes by the time we stagger the kids in and out with social distancing. Unfortunately, that's one of those cases that social distancing has to go away to get a class in a locker room. We have 5 classes of physical education at the high school per day, 3 classes at the middle school. You simply can't rotate them in and get them out in time for any activity. Our physical education teachers I believe, are being cognizant of that. But I just don't believe we're at that point.
You brought up the piece that I missed, which was gym lockers, and I get what you're saying, but there's 2 things, and they're not participating now, I have to think, at a large rate anyway, because if your kid has to run the mile in first period, they can be sweaty all day. I'm not gonna make my kid do that. I mean, it's a problem, so now we're in essence, de-emphasizing the need for physical education, which I'm a big proponent for physical education, so I have a concern with what the participation level is based on this. And if we're talking about going in and using a gym locker, to change quick and move out, again, this is a little different than sports and hallway lockers, where if we don't have hallway lockers and we have lockers in gym, if everybody wears a proper mask, we shouldn't really have an issue. right? We still have to have, what, 3 feet?
Well, no, remember, the guidance is 3 feet instructional area.
Mhm.
That's not an instructional area.
It would be
So
60.
to me, the guidance
So you
is
mean
6
it-
feet in the locker room.
I know, but it just goes to, where this stupid guidance is, and the fact that, the same 2 kids could be next to each other in a classroom, and they have to be 3 feet apart, and and nobody would have to be quarantined if they wore their masks. But yet, if they're the same 3 feet apart in the locker room, they do have to be quarantined. I mean, some of this, we have to look at it and say, it's pretty absurd. And that's the frustration for me, right? It's different, it's different from a classroom to a locker room for the same 2 people.
Ms. Ancona has her hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that, Chris, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not worried about quarantines. I'm worried about COVID positives. Like, that's what we need to worry about. That's the whole point of social distancing, to avoid the COVID positives. It's spreading in schools rampant right now. We're not the only district facing this. We've had a lot in the past 2 weeks, and a lot of that I do feel is from sports and from locker rooms. We have an issue, and we need to do everything we can. Now is not the time to lay back on guidelines and cleaning and exposure. I understand the frustration with lockers. I get it. My kid's backpack is heavy too, but I'd rather their backpacks be heavy than them have COVID. The Delta variant is not a joke. This is not the same COVID we dealt with last year. And you could ask any medical professional that. The rapid tests aren't even showing positives. We have that issue that we're relying on rapid tests, and the PCR is really what's needed to get these true positives, because there's a lot of kids going around spreading it right now with false positives from a rapid test. So I understand everybody's concern, but now is not the time to be lax on anything. Thank you.
So I think we can just sum it up and say that we want the administration to proceed with due caution.
And
And
we
keeping in- right.
will continue to look at options and ways to get kids into
Right.
hallway lockers.
And for those that do have genuine difficulties because of the weight of an instrument or a backpack, the storage areas that you've mentioned. And if you could just let us know that that's being looked at, that would be great.
One question that I don't expect an answer to tonight, and I don't even know if you're able to, but do we know how many I think we said we have 68 COVID positives in our school population since September, since school started, correct? Do we know how many contracted the virus in our buildings?
Contracted.
How many people got sick, and how many people caught it in our schools versus being outside?
That I don't know.
Okay. Do we know how many students that have been quarantined since the beginning of school ended up being positive as a result of close contact?
No, I don't.
Okay. There is a way to track quarantines.
That we could figure out, but
Okay.
that I don't know. I do know of a couple, but I couldn't tell you I know all of them.
Okay.
But on top of that, you have to be concerned about the quarantine requirements, and if there are too many people that have to be quarantined, that's disruptive to the classroom instruction, because then you've got some kids who are at home and having to go.
I understand that. As a parent with 2 kids in school, I'd rather take that. It's just me, it's my personal opinion, and I'm not imposing my will. I'm more concerned with what they're missing out by the way school is functioning now than if they had to stay home for 10 days. It's not likely. I have probably a lot of fundamental differences on the subject than some people on the board, and I understand that. But I'm trying to take, my opinion out of it, and I'm trying to focus on, we talk about social emotional learning all the time. I'm really worried about the impact this is having on our kids, and I don't want to project my feelings on the virus, but I am not afraid of the virus the way some people are.
That to me is not what we're discussing here.
No, it's not, and
It
that's
has
why
to
I'm
do
stating
with-
it. I
right.
get that, that's my
It has to
point.
do with basically running a business here, which is the business of educating our kids,
Mhm.
and the need to keep classrooms properly staffed so that they're not out sick or quarantined. And similarly, keeping children in the classroom as best we can, because we don't want them to have to go remote because of a quarantine.
I get all that, I completely
So
understand.
that's why the superintendent and his administrators are trying to tread this needle and figure it out as best that they can,
I
given the
understand
competing
that, and my
interests.
point in bringing these things up is, sometimes the administration, they may not have children in school and they're dealing with this, and it's a different perspective that I have and some other people have. And that's why we bring back our feedback and we discuss it. That's what this venue is for, right?
I would like a action on administration's recommendation to amend the reopening plan by eliminating temperature checks upon building entry for students, faculty, and staff.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the recommendation to amend the reopening plan to eliminate temperature checks upon building entry for students, faculty, and staff? Mr. Trent made the motion, second by Ms. Aruda, and
Oh, sure.
question or
Oh,
discussion?
no, I'm sorry, do.
Okay, ready to vote, all in favor of approving the modification? I
We
have,
have 3 on the board and three
three
on the
for,
table.
it's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. And I promise the administration will continue to look at the issue and look for
Okay,
options.
thank you.
And our next item for discussion is communicating with the board, and I'm going to defer to board president and the board to have that discussion with regard to.
Let me just introduce it by saying I see a couple of issues here. And one is clarification so that members of the public know what to expect in terms of their making comments to the board, either live during our meeting or in a writing that is read during our meeting. And I think that one suggestion I would make is that we modify our notice of meeting a little bit to put in a comment about the ways that the public could make comments that will be verbalized during our meeting. And I think we also need to make clear that every email that comes into us gets shared with every board member and with the superintendent, so that, you know, we're all aware of what has come in by email prior to the meeting. And that's separate and apart from anything that's to be read. So I see Mr. Trent, you had your hand up.
I did. Can you just reiterate where we are now? What happens if, a constituent wants a letter read to the board, in public, or what happens when they email the board? Can you just talk about where we are now?
It's an effort to eliminate any confusion, because I know after the last meeting, there was some confusion on the part of a member of the public who had sent in a letter to the clerk, but it was captioned questions, questions for the board, not commentary. And those questions actually had been answered or were addressed in the superintendent's report that evening. So in terms of the substance of the question, it was addressed by the superintendent.
So I guess what I'm really trying to get at is, are we reading, emails publicly that the writer wants to be read? Is that what we're currently doing?
I think that's what we need to discuss.
Okay.
And how do we know, just because it's sent to the clerk, we don't know that they intend for it to be read. It could be it's intended just so that we know about the issue, or they want a response from administration.
So I guess to that topic, my opinion would be that we stop reading, letters or emails publicly. because as I believe the discussion was before, when we talked about this, is that they are ultimately writing a letter to us to make us aware of something. And I know that when things are emailed and sent to you, Ms. Hayes, you send it to us. So I think that is the ultimate reason why a writer should be writing the board, is to make us aware of something.
So you're making the point that you see this as, since it's a way to address the board so that the particular communicator is letting the board know what his or her concern is, and we all know it, that it would be duplicative, basically, to read it out loud at a board meeting.
I don't see a purpose to read it out loud.
Okay. Any other comments about that? Because I think I heard Mr. Pacini at the last meeting say something along those.
About, I'm sorry, I was.
That basically, that you thought that by getting the email and the fact that we share it and we all know what the emails say,
Mhm.
that having it read out loud.
Yeah, listen, for as long as I've been a trustee, I don't like there being an opportunity for anybody not to, I have a hard time with making it too easy for somebody to participate, right? I think if somebody wants to be, they should be here and read their notice. If they want the board to know it, that's fine, but I don't agree with reading the letters out loud. I mean, our meetings are open to the public now. They can come, anybody can come, and they can be right up there, and they can address the board. So, I think sometimes when, and I said this at the last National Suffolk meeting when they discussed the changes to the open meetings law, I think that when we make things too easy, I think it breeds apathy. That's my problem.
Well, I guess I just go back and look at it as what is the purpose of the public commentary? And it's always been so that we can hear from the public about what their concerns are. And the open meetings law was written well before we had before email and before any of the virtual options that we have. So that's the reason to bring it up and discuss it tonight, because since we do have this available now and a way for the public to make comments to us, then the issue is how much, if any, of the reading out loud should be done when we already know what has been said. And particularly when a lot of the issues, like lockers and backpacks and quarantines, were being addressed by the superintendent in his report. So I've heard two people say, we've already got the avenue in place by email, no, and you would not be advocating to have it read out loud as a duplication.
Correct.
Okay, let me go to my Zoom attendees. Ms. Aruda or Ms. Felice, or any comments?
No, not really. I mean, I think that we have discussed this before. I see both sides of it. Yes, I would like to see people be able to go up to the podium and speak. I also know standing up at the podium sometimes that can be a little bit challenging for many people. So the idea that they can get their thoughts out and the information out through email would be nice. We don't entertain the questions or answer the questions, and that might be something that if we had it in advance, we knew. So if we put in an earlier deadline, if emails came in, we might be able to answer some questions that could not be answered in the chain of commands if they were not personal to a specific student or personnel. So it's just food for thought. I know that we've talked about this before.
Okay. Let's see, Ms. Ancona, did you have a comment or no?
No, I said it last meeting, I could see both sides of it. But my initial reaction a couple weeks ago was that I feel that people can come to the meetings now and that they should be read. And it takes a lot of time to read those emails, and we've already read them before, since we got them prior. So, you know, there's always two sides to everything. I don't even know what's right at this point with this. I feel like maybe because the numbers are going back up, maybe we should extend it a little. But it's not like people are lining up at the boardroom too. So I don't know. I really am at a loss. I don't know.
Okay. Ms. Felice?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I do support reading the letters, and not requiring people to attend in person. I just think it's a way of being more inclusive. I always strive for more ways in the community can interact and communicate with the Board of Education, and that's just one more way of doing it. Ms. Arruda spoke earlier today how convenient it was for the teacher to be remote. I mean, remote is here now. It's an option we didn't even conceptualize 2 years ago, and now it's here, and it's here in ways that we can really work to our advantage. So I would like to allow the community to have that opportunity if they choose not to attend in person, but they want their comments read aloud, that they be given that opportunity to do so.
And one other thought that I got to mention, one of the reasons too, and I think I did say this at the last meeting, having them read, like the purpose of sending a correspondence or speaking at the podium is to let the board know your feelings on a topic. That's been kind of solved through an email. So if we read them out loud, it's almost like we're somebody's sounding board, and that's one of my fundamental issues. But something that Ms. Arruda said really kind of resonated, where I don't think it would be a bad idea to have a portion of our meeting where if there is a question asked, it can be answered here publicly. And I don't necessarily, and I think that's going to be kind of up to the board president, superintendent of, hey, what's a simple question that could be asked? We received 5, emails from community members about lockers. The locker question has been answered tonight, but maybe, if there's something like that and say, hey, listen, we know we've gotten a bunch of correspondence, maybe there's just a section that says, these are without reading the whole letter, hey, 3 people asked about, the crummy chicken nuggets in the middle, I don't know, and here's the answer. That may be a way to alleviate some of that communication, and people can actually get answers. And everybody gets the answer, because if somebody asks a question and the superintendent or the administrator emails them, the greater public did not get the answer to that question, and it may have been something that was on their mind. So that's something to think about.
So you're suggesting sort of a mid-range, which would be not to read the emails in their entirety, but rather to take a digest of them and say, over the last 2 weeks, we got in 3 emails about lockers, and we got 2 about backpacks.
Or something along those lines.
Or something along those
A
lines.
specific question that the answer can be made public. Hey, what's the grading policy for this that somebody emailed us? Or are we using tech, whatever. Something that can be answered simply. Because a lot of times, if somebody even comes in person, I know we have this policy of not necessarily answering, but every now and then the superintendent or the board president will answer because it's a simple question, and then it puts it to bed. It's over. It's the same thing if we get a question by email, that maybe that appeases some things. Just a suggestion.
How does that sound to the Zoom people? Ms. Arruda's nodding yes, I think.
I think that's a good idea, that we should be able to answer questions.
I'm sorry, do like a digest?
Yeah, I agree that to answer questions on, frequently received emails would be a good medium.
I also think there needs to be a cutoff. Oftentimes on board days, we get emails until 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, right before. So there needs to kind of be a cutoff as we were doing it before. I know myself, and I know a lot of us that are working 9 to 5. At 5 o'clock, we're sitting here going through all of the new information an hour before we have to be there. So, and I think the public needs to understand that as well, that we are working individuals. So there, to respect our time as well, there needs to be a cutoff as to when the emails or when the expectation of the answer to the email will be there.
Ms. Felice, would that, do you think that would take care of your concern?
Yes, it would. It sounds more inclusive and it gives us a chance to interact, and I do support
Okay.
creating a deadline to avoid that last minute email.
So I'm gonna get the clerk to weigh in on this question too, because by doing a digest, you and I would have to spend some time making sure it's together. So, what kind of deadline do you think would work from your end?
Well, I think we were doing noon before.
The day before?
Right now, we were doing noon of the meeting.
I know, but that was
Right.
without having to digest it. It was just,
If we could do noon the day before maybe?
okay, how about noon the day before? Would that be all right?
It's fine
Mr.
with me.
Pacini said okay. Mr. Trent that's okay, and so,
And can I
And-
ask, is
yes.
this for the purpose of responding?
no, it's for the purpose of just announcing that we've heard
Okay,
from
okay.
3 people about something, or 27 people
Yeah,
about
'cause
something.
remember, already, when we get emails on a topic, I generally put it in my communication announcements anyway, knowing the public's asking for it. And you've often asked me, could you make sure that's in, because you've gotten it.
Right.
So when we know the public's got an issue, we try to have those things responded.
And I agree that you do a good job at doing that. I just think we might want to reference in your comments, in response to communication from parents, that's all I'm saying, because I think one of the problems that I think some people might feel, especially those who are sending letters, is, well, I got the canned response, which I think is actually appropriate and fine, but if they really want to know, unless they were reached out to by an administrator on a specific topic, they just might want the personal touch, saying, hey, they took my question, they considered it, and they answered it. And a lot of times those answers might be good for everybody to hear. That's all. And I don't think it's every email. I don't think it's that. I don't know if we need to say, all right, we've got 10 emails on lockers, 17 on gym. I don't know if it's really that. I think it's more or less when there is an answer to be given and can be publicly, we should.
And also, don't misconstrue what I was trying to say, because it's not really a matter of numbers, but rather.
Yeah, no, I understand.
We got emails about this.
Sure.
We got a number of emails about this topic.
Yeah, sure.
Or we had one parent who was concerned about this. And that's just, to make it clear, we know what we've heard.
And that's what I'm getting at. An
Right.
acknowledgement of their concern, it goes a long way.
Right. So, I think after this discussion, I don't think we have to make a motion to do this, to work on,
Sounds like an agenda item discussion for you, Superintendent, in my opinion.
okay, and also,
Well,
working.
do you have to work on your policy?
No, working with council to just go over the notice of meeting to see if we need to tweak that a little bit with regard to,
Well,
public
what
comment.
you're discussing, I think, is not consistent with your policy.
I know, we're getting to that next.
Okay?
So we've got a notice of meeting to talk about that I think we can
Okay.
just
Yeah.
do with you and Ms. Engelholt. And now if we can go over to our policy, because that one I think needs to be looked at, and, I guess, and given that we have our strategic planning committee, I guess it would need to go through there to have it reviewed. But email that comes in, any email that has been coming to me, I've copied all of you on it. And I copied the superintendent on it, because most of the time, in fact, probably just about all the time, it's an administrator's issue. It's not a board issue. I think that it is a board issue for the board to be aware of what the concerns are, what the parents, what the students, what the teachers are experiencing. That is, we need to know that. But a lot of the approaches to it really are administrative. And that's, you know, you made a reference to the canned response that we go out. And that was prepared, you know, in conjunction with advice of counsel to make,
And I think
make it
it's-
clear
I think
that
it's
it's
great.
gotten, it's being directed to the appropriate place.
Sure.
So,
I don't see where the policy needs to change. All we're doing is
well,
adding agenda
I'll
items to
tell you
acknowledge
why I
receipt.
think it's a problem. And that is, it makes a specific reference to,
A or B?
actually, with regard to B, I think maybe we want to, that would mean either changing the policy or changing the response I've been using, because it says, you know, that according to the policy, the president will pass it to the appropriate point person who will address it. And our point person is the superintendent, since we don't direct staff. We go through the superintendent. So by saying it's going to the superintendent, but I would think maybe the response could be changed just a little bit to the superintendent who will address the issue.
So
And-
when you give it to me,
Uh-huh,
I give it to the appropriate person.
right,
And they respond.
so,
So I believe we are following the law.
I think we are too, and I don't think we're changing anything. If the appropriate response is verbalized by the superintendent at a meeting, that fits in with the response, and it could be both. If you, and you know, hey, FYI, we got a letter about X, Y, Z, you know, this is the solution and this is what we did about it. So if that information was beneficial to somebody outside the person who wrote the letter, more people have it. I don't think this is like an everyday occurrence either. I think these are few and far between, that we get a communication that's about the broad scope for everybody. A lot of times they're specific to the situation. So changing the policy for these few instances when I don't think we're veering off the policy, I think is kind of a waste of time.
okay.
See, I think,
Respectfully, so I don't know, let's go to the locker issue, right? You get 5 questions about lockers. They come in, are they all referred to the superintendent and all responded to? And then you're just, the fact that you receive questions by members of the public about lockers is just going to be noted at the board meeting? So this process with regard to the locker questions will go through question B. You're just going above and beyond your current policy to note that you have received questions?
That would be the,
It
you know,
doesn't,
during the public participation portion, where we invite people if they want to speak for 3 minutes. I think I could just make an announcement that we've received communication from members of the public with regard to lockers. And, you know, we've already heard the superintendent explain the situation.
Right, but just want to be clear that the superintendent's explanation at the board table is in addition to the superintendent having somebody respond to the specific correspondent coming in from the public. Is that accurate?
That would be my intention, and I think that's what's happening now.
well,
With-
using the locker issue is a bad example of that.
Okay.
So that's not happening in the locker.
but it kind of is, right? You made an announcement, oh, you're
Today.
right.
So-
You
so-
didn't respond, and that's why, to me, that, I think it's an efficiency to some extent, because, you know, if anything has to change, we don't define how it's addressed, and it says it will be, correspondence will be passed along to the appropriate point person who will properly address the contents of the communication. Doesn't say that's private communication, doesn't say it's a school board meeting. So it could be either one, and I think that should be at the discretion of the board president and the
Yeah, but
superintendent.
that's not what this says.
It says and also we get copies of the response, which
Right,
I
so
think
there
would
is
be
a-
burdensome on our administration to
But-
copy us on everything like that.
Right, so there's 2 choices here. Either the board discusses the contents, which only would happen at a board meeting when they're all read out and discussed. Or those questions, so the questions about the lockers come in, they're all read and discussed by the board, or those questions about the lockers come in, they're referred to the superintendent of schools, the superintendent of schools refers it to whoever is the proper point person, and the response to the person who sent the letter in is then forwarded to the board. That's what this says.
So that is happening in most cases now. The individual, and usually the principal, would respond to the person. That's when it's in writing. They forward it to me and I send it to the board. However, sometimes that response is over the phone. So it's not a correspondence.
And actually, having the phone conversation makes it more personal with regard to the public, and I like the fact that they're doing that. But to have them have to then memorialize it in a writing that then comes back is,
So what I
don't
think
know
you're
that we
discussing here
intended that.
provides more flexibility to responding to the public than you currently have in your policy.
Mhm.
And so, my suggestion is, I know Barbara's been taking notes.
I have.
And perhaps we will draft something for the board's consideration as to what we're hearing and see if we can capture the intent of the board in a revision to this policy that can be sent to the strategic planning.
Right. Good. I just want to, whatever we do, I want us to be as clear as possible that we do hear what people are saying when they send us the emails. It's not going into a circular file. And so whatever we need to do, if we need to change our policy, if we need to change our notice of meeting, we'll wait to hear what your recommendation would be, and we can have that on the agenda at the next meeting. Does that work for Miss?
That you're gonna sidestep strategic planning? You want to have a
Yeah.
discussion, not action?
Yeah, it would be discussion. We'll see what Mr. Sheehan and Ms. Engelhardt are suggesting, and we can have further discussion. And then it would go through the appropriate advisory committees. And the benefit of doing that is, since our advisory committees have members of the public as well as parents and faculty and staff on it, we would have input to see that we're meeting the needs of everybody, as well as the need of the board and the need of the superintendent. So we'll have it on the agenda again next meeting with some input from our legal counsel. Okay. Now we have,
Now we're moving on to board
Gee.
consent.
right, board consent.
And the administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in schedules G1 and G2.
Is there a motion to approve curriculum items G1 and G2? Mr. Trent, a second by Mr. Pacini. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's unanimous.
Yeah, 3 on the board. And the administration recommends approval of personnel changes reflected in schedules H1 through H9.
Is there a motion to approve the personnel changes shown in H1 through H9? Mr. Pacini, a second by Ms. Ancona. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Aruda has a question.
You're muted.
You're muted.
H21, the date, the effective date is 25.
I'm having trouble
can't hear
hearing you.
Oh, sorry.
very faint.
2.1 is what she was asking about.
2.1?
Yeah, effective date is the end of the month. Is there any reason for that? I know the replacement was for like a little while ago.
I'm sorry, you're talking about 2.1 appointment?
Yes.
It's
And what's the-
effective 10/25.
Yeah,
And yes, thank you.
yeah, because they're coming from another job.
Okay, okay,
So that's
thank
his
you.
start, that's his start
It's a
date.
start date.
That's a start date. No, I knew who they're replacing has been gone for a little while, so I just
Yeah.
wanted clarification on that.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. All in favor of the motion approving items H1 through H9? It is unanimous.
And moving on to business, administration recommends approval of business items reflected in schedules I-1 through 9.
Is there a motion to approve items I-1 through 9? Ms. Ancona made the motion. Is there a second? Mr. Piccini? Any questions or discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. And there's no commentary. We're closing, meeting closing with closing remarks by board members. Okay. We have one more thing to announce. With great regret, we're going to have a vacancy on our board after our next meeting. Ms. Ancona and her family are moving out of state, and we will have more to say about how much we appreciate having her on the board and working with her, as well as any plans with regard to what, if anything, to do about the vacancy. And we'll be meeting, it'll be an agenda item for discussion at our next meeting, and with the advice of council, we will be proceeding. We're going to miss you, Ms. Ancona, and like I said, we'll say things about that at the next meeting. But, that took a lot out of me. So, do we have any closing remarks? I'm starting with Mr. Trent.
I just have a request. Dr. Johnny, is it possible that we could get like an updated adversity report similar to the one that we got last year?
Sure. Let me dig up that one that we gave you last year.
How often is it updated? Do we know?
We just run that right off of our management system.
Oh.
So,
What report was that? That wasn't clear what report was
We
being.
gave a demographic report of staff hires last year. Mr. Trent asked for another copy.
so that is,
An updated copy.
it's basically just, you make a copy. It's not like having to create anything.
Well, we run a report and then, of course, HR teases it out because sometimes people are in different spots.
Within that same report, is it possible to have a demographics report for those that applied for employment?
No, they're not in the management system.
Okay.
Okay. It's
Thank you.
a good
You're welcome.
question. Let's see.
Could we get an updated report on our enrollment numbers too, as well?
Sure.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Trent, do you have closing remarks?
I do not.
No. Okay. Mr. Piccini?
Just a quick question. I know we received, I should have asked this earlier. I know we received communication in the board update that, my out-of-the-box idea from other districts to, rent buses and use employees and the whole thing. have we looked into, come winter time, renting small 15-passenger vans, things like that, and having our staff drive that if we run into this issue of lack of sports transportation for, smaller teams that could be accommodated in a 15-passenger
Right.
van or two.
So the board knows that we did explore use of our bus fleet for the vendor, individuals who may
which was a
somebody
no-go.
else. That's a no.
Mhm.
We have not looked into vans, but we do have some concerns because vans are not certified transportation vehicles for students, so we do need to look further into that.
Okay. I just wouldn't want to see, our student athletes miss out on more opportunities because the busing situation. And it doesn't look like the busing situation is going to get any better. It's probably going to get worse. We heard from Huntington today that they lost their entire contract and have no buses for students. So, I don't think that's going to happen to Town Bus, but if they're unable to fulfill their obligation, and then I guess part and parcel with that is, and I don't remember if I asked this when we talked about it at the last meeting, what is our they have a contract, they're not fulfilling the contract, we pay per instance and per bus. We're not paying under a contract that they're not fulfilling completely, are we?
I'm not sure we're not, so I have a nod that we're not.
We're not, okay.
And remember, though, the real issue right now are after-school buses. Town doesn't provide our after-school buses.
No, and I know that.
Okay.
No, I know that, but I mean, who does, if schools have still,
It's Suffolk BOCES, some gets farmed out to town, some gets farmed out to Montauk.
yeah, I just would like to have some sort of scenario in place. If we get to the point where we have 12 kids on the basketball team, a 15-passenger van is suffice. The legalities of all that, I have to think it's something we can explore and find out about.
And
Don't
can you give us, regular updates on that, Dr. Gianni, as well?
Regular updates on what?
On your search to, or your development of a plan, just in case what happens,
Sure. Well, we'll look into that van issue.
Okay.
So that could be like part of the report.
Yeah.
Do we, I'm sorry, to extend this, I apologize, I'll wrap it up quick. Do we anticipate the issue with the buses alleviating as we go on? Because the winter and spring teams aren't necessarily as big. Right, football team is probably 2 buses with everybody, I don't know if it's 1, so I mean, with some of those larger teams, so, winter sports are generally smaller teams, are they not?
Yes.
We have less athletes traveling, do we think that it'll ease up a bit?
I don't know if we've explored it, but
I'm
I kind
just-
of doubt it, because you generally have more teams going, so.
More
unless
teams.
they're-
Yeah, so
Unless
you
they're
net
doing
result.
a double up, I don't see it reducing. But since we're on buses, I'll tell the board and the public, my real concern is daytime buses. Because remember, our bus drivers are also bound by the weekly testing.
Sure.
So that could change things for us dramatically. So we're hopeful it will.
Ms. Johnson?
I do not.
No? Thank you. Ms. Ancona? No? Ms. Aruda? No? Ms. Felice?
Thank you.
It looked like you were trying to say something, but you're on mute. Ms. Felice?
I said no, thank you, sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. All
got
right, so, is there a motion, Mr. Trent, and a second, Mr. Puccini, and this motion is to adjourn? So all in favor? It's unanimous. Good night to all.
All right, everybody.
Good night.